Welcome, everybody. Okay, let's try again. Scene 10. We're going to finish looking at some of the stuff today. I'm going to pick up on some of the things that you guys have identified in the course of your work. We're going to start just by looking at scene 10. Initially, just picking up where we started off yesterday, picking up on some of the ideas in the opening section of the play. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to look at that opening stage description. Stage direction. As the drinking baccy went on, a mood of hysterical exhilaration came into her, and she has decked herself out in a somewhat soiled and crumpled white satin evening gown and a pair of scuffed silver slippers with brilliance set in their heels. She has been packing with the purpose of leaving, as much escaping as leaving, but she's convinced herself through all of her drinking that she is leaving to go away with Shep Huntley, and she's now set herself up a little game of make-believe that she is sitting there with her high society friends. She has dressed herself in an evening gown, again white satin, so again this idea of something that looks expensive but is made of a slightly cheaper material. And the silver slippers are scuffed, which demonstrates they've had quite significant wealth and gets this idea of tarnished wealth, or that wealth is now damaged and doesn't exist anymore. Pretty much a useful metaphor for Blanche's life. The brilliant set in their heels, that's the idea of fake jewels designed again to make them look expensive, but in fact what we're seeing is something quite superficial. The delusion is part of her means of coping with the sheer terror of her being sent back to Laurel, which was intended to be Stanley's final act of cruelty. He felt that was his revenge on Blanche finally being able to expose her and sending her away. This is her means of coping by imagining that she's not returning to Laurel, but in fact she's moving on to live in Dallas with her imaginary lover. That's the lifestyle that she desires. But the simple fact of the matter is someone like Shep Huntley desires her in a very different way from the lifestyle that she would like to desire herself. Later in the scene, as she begins to realise the real threat that Stanley poses her, her mindset begins to change. Once he has exposed her lies, we see a change in how the stage directions are using here. Williams uses his plastic theatre to capture the ideas that he's trying to convey. Here he uses lighting and sound to begin creating that sort of vivid picture and projecting the inner turmoil of Blanche onto the set itself. So the lurid reflections appear on the wall around Blanche. The shadows are of a grotesque and menacing form. So these ideas, these projections are sitting on the wall behind her. They're designed to look monstrous, animalistic and disturbing, which is very much how she sees Stanley, as a monstrous and animalistic character. The idea behind them is they're almost meant to be sort of scary but kind of indistinguishable forms, so fairly hard to sort of pin down. It's just the idea that she is struggling to understand the world that she's facing and that everything is increasingly terrifying to her. She goes to the phone at this point, and we imagine again that she's phoning Shep Huntley, but she has actually no means of getting in touch with him, and so the hopeless attempt just to get attention by jiggling the hook of the phone, which is the way you would get in touch with the operator. It's a futile gesture, because even she's beginning to realise that her illusions are beginning to fall apart. This is all a product of the cruelty that she's experienced, the abandonment by Mitch, and the sort of the rejection and the attack by Stanley in this scene and again in scene 8. And everything that she wants is now beginning to disappear. The fear she now has of Stanley is that at this point he's beginning to change into his pyjamas. She begins to realise that he is a menace and a threat to her, and that she's in real danger at this stage here. Final quotation I want to look at is this one here. It's the closing line and stage direction of the scene. Stanley says, "Tiger, Tiger, drop the bottle top, drop it. We've had this date with each other from the beginning." She moans. The bottle top falls. She sinks to her knees. He picks up her inert figure and carries her to the bed. The hot trumpet and drums from the four deuces sound loudly. Now, this is the climax of the scene. It's also the climax of the play. And there are a number of things at work here. We'll start with looking at the dialogue. Stanley refers to her as a tiger. A tiger is an animal that we would see as strong. She's carrying a broken bottle, which implies that she has claws, but fundamentally speaking, she is a weak character, and he's using this term ironically. He is suggesting to her that she likes the illusion of being dangerous. Everything about her has been an illusion, but he doesn't fully believe that Blanche is prepared to use the bottle, and that's demonstrated when she drops the bottle top. His statement, "We've had this date with each other from the beginning," demonstrates that belief in his head that what he's about to do is justified. He believes that because Blanche has flirted with him, that in some sense is consent for the action that he's about to take. And he's doing this not as an act of love or desire, but as an act of control, of dominating her to the point at which she will no longer struggle and fight back against Stanley. At this point, all of her illusions and delusions fall, and when she's described as inert in that final stage direction, that's the sign that all fight has now left her. She has no illusions left. And the music here that gets increasingly loud is the music of New Orleans, and against this idea that New Orleans is going to cover up for Stanley. It might suggest as well at this point that she is focusing on what's outside of her in order to distance herself from the physical act of violence and rape that she's about to experience. The other side of it is the sense that New Orleans is going to cover up Stanley's actions. When she drops the bottle top, that's the sort of symbolic moment at which she gives up all resistance to the cruelty around her. At no point, however, does this deem that she's consenting to what Stanley's about to do. It's simply that the cruelty she has experienced has taken all fight from her. She has lost control of herself. Stanley has regained control of the situation. She's no longer able to kid herself that there is something better waiting for her. And the irony of all this is that her lies mean that people are not going to believe her. This is the final description. We don't actually see Stanley's attack. We know that she has cried for help when she was with Mitch in the last scene, alleging that he was attempting to rape her when that wasn't strictly true. And so therefore there's a sense in which even Mitch, who's probably the closest to her, is not going to believe what she said. And it creates a degree of ambiguity that we can't be entirely sure what's happened, whether whatever Blanche says from this point forward is going to be truth or just another one of her lies. That ambiguity is never fully resolved, but there is very clear sort of hints in scene 11 that Blanche is telling the truth, but that ultimately her life of lies has led to this point where nobody's going to believe her. Now, thinking about the play and thinking about how we're going to sort of take the play on from here, we will look at scene 11 next week. First and foremost, I just want to take you through some of the thematic threads in the play. First and foremost, you've got the idea of control. All the way through this play, it's been a battle for control. The perfume between Stanley and the perfume is used as the first battle for control, which Stanley wins. The smashing of the radio, the recovering of the chairs, the domination in the bathroom, Stanley's detective work, and so on. These are all about part of gaining control of his house. Ultimately, in scene 11, Blanche will finally be banished. The idea of cruelty. Blanche hates herself. There's nobody in this play who hates Blanche more than Blanche. And she was cruel to her husband and now is punishing herself for that cruelty of her own. Life has been cruel to her. Stanley's violence to Stella demonstrates cruelty. His persecution of Blanche, Mitch's really carefully targeted persecution and personal attack. And obviously, the fact that Stanley, on the night that his child has been born, chooses to rape his sister-in-law while his wife is in hospital. That is an incredibly cruel and sadistic act. Something that really makes Stanley an incredibly hateful character, and made worse by the fact the world is so cruel that it won't believe Blanche. We also look at the ideas of illusion and self-delusion. Blanche is in the position she's in because of her delusions of grandeur, believing that she believes she's better than everybody else. Through the illusions that she has better people waiting for her, like Huntley. The illusion of her cleanliness is a symbol of her higher class status. Delusion that she's in love with Mitch. the persistent lies that means no one believes anything she says about Stanley, and so on. And even at the end, you know, one of the most, in the final scene, she uses the phrase, "I have always depended on the kindness of strangers." She used that earlier in the play as well. That's a euphemism about her sordid past. Kindness was not kindness. It was exploitation. It was cruelty. And then the other way of thinking about the play is look at the idea of desire. There's love, which is Stanley and Stella at their best, Blanche and her husband, and their need to find love with Mitch, even if it's a marriage of convenience. And then there's the other idea of love, the idea of physical desire, animalistic desire, represented through her history with the pupils, with local soldiers, and her activities at the Flamingo Hotel, through her flirtation with the paper boy, and through this notion that Stanley categorises women by their attractiveness, and the way that she has flirted with him, with Mitch, and then the final rape by Stanley. It's that sort of seedier side of what we would call desire. Okay, so that is where we're at. If you make sure your notes are up to date for the scene, we'll look at scene 11 next week. And then from there, we'll begin the process of preparing and writing timed critical essays. Okay, the 3 quotations here, you can turn those into study cards. Between what I've said and what you will have with the PowerPoint that I'll share with you shortly, all that information is there. If you have any questions, and of course you must ask them, we can answer each other's as well as I can answer them, remember, and there's been some really great work from the class on this, and I'll try and find ways of sharing some of that wisdom that you guys have had, that way of expressing things over the next couple of weeks. Okay, if you have questions, make sure you ask them. Until then, the Reidster. Right.